So in this lecture, we are going to see what is class, how to define the class, that is the syntax of the class. Then we have example of the class. And after this, we are going to see what is object and how to create the object and how to access the data members and member functions using the object. And then we are going to see how to define member functions in the classes. And at the end, I'm going to demonstrate whatever we are studying in today's lecture, that is class and object. So what is class? A class in C++ is a building block that leads to object-oriented programming. We have seen in the object-oriented programming, one of the important feature is class, and second one is object. So in this lecture, we are going to cover class and object. So basically, C++ is a building block, and it is one kind of blueprint for the object and how to create the class, what is the syntax, that we are going to see. And after this, we are going to see the object. So it is a user-defined data type. As we have seen in the data type, class is one kind of user-defined data type which holds its own data members and member functions, which can be accessed and used by creating an instance of that class. So it is one type of user-defined data types wherein as a user, we can mention the different data members, we can mention the different member functions inside the class, and we can operate on these functions and data members by creating the instance of the class, that is nothing but the object. So C++ class is like a blueprint for an object. It is just one definition that helps to the object to create the instance of that class. That's why it is called as blueprint of the object or blueprint for an object. For example, consider class of cars. There may be many cars with different names and brand, but all of them will share the common properties like 4 wheels, speed limit, mileage range, etc. So here a car is a class and wheels, speed limit, mileage are their properties. In class, we can define this as a car as a class wherein we have data members like properties of this class, nothing but wheels, speed limit, mileage, etc. A class is a user-defined data member which has data members and member functions. Keep in mind what this class will consist. The class will consist two things. First one is data member and next one is member functions. So data members are what is data members? Data members are nothing but the data variables. And what is member functions? These are the functions used to manipulate these variables, and together these data members and member functions define the properties and behavior of the object in the class. So with the help of data members and data functions, they can perform a particular task that is nothing but that is called as properties and behavior of the object inside the class. So in the above example of class car, the data member will be speed limit, mileage, etc. And the member functions could be apply the brakes or increase the speed, etc. So such kind of functions, member functions you can define, and data members like speed limit, mileage you can define inside the class car. So class definitions. When you define a class, you define a blueprint for the data type. Keep in mind. This doesn't actually define any data, but it doesn't define what the class name means, and that is what an object of the class will consist of and what operations can be performed on such an object. A class definition start with the keyword class. We have seen one of the keyword in C++ is class. This keyword class is used to define the class, followed by a class name and the class body enclosed by a pair of curly braces. We will see this with the help of syntax and example so that you will get the clear idea about how to define the class. A class definition must be followed either by a semicolon or a list of declarations. So how to define the class? So this is the syntax to define the class. First is class. So here it is. This is the keyword class and this is the name of the class. You can give any name to the class. For example, just now we have seen example of car. So you can mention class car over here, or you can mention another class. For example, class student, class customer, etc. So this is the way you can have a first statement in the class that is begin with the class keyword. Then open the curly bracket. Keep in mind whatever you are mentioning inside the class, it is inside the opening curly braces and closing curly braces. For this, you have to mention the access specifiers. So what is access specifier? The access specifier defines the below data will be visible up to what level. So there are three access specifiers. First one is private, next one is public, and next one is protected. So these are the access specifiers. So for time being, we are going to see this public. Public means whatever data members you have defined over here will be accessed by anyone or from anywhere. That's why the name given as a public access specifier. So after defining the access specifier, you have to define the data members. So inside these data members, you have to mention the variables to be used in your program. So all these variables belongs to this access specifier. For example, suppose I mention here public, all the data members belongs to the public. They can be accessible from anywhere in our program. After this, you have to mention the member functions which will take this data members to perform some operations to complete a particular task. So in this, you can mention the functions. This is the opening and closing curly bracket of the function. Inside this, we can mention the body of the function. Whatever particular task you want to carry out, you can write the code of that inside this function. So after this, we can have closing curly bracket. So keep in mind, in this closing curly bracket, after this closing curly bracket, you will have this semicolon. So this indicates that here it is the end of the class. So class name ends with a semicolon. Keep in mind, this is the beginning of the just a minute. Now you will see that this highlighter. So this is the opening of the curly bracket and this is the closing of the curly bracket followed by semicolon. So in C++, when you define a class, it will be open with the curly braces and it will end with the closing curly braces followed by the semicolon. So this is the syntax to define class inside the C++. So I will take one example of the class. So suppose I have defined the class student. I have given the name class student. Inside this class student, I have mentioned the visibility level, that is access specifier, as a public. And after this access specifier, you have to mention this semicolon. Colon. You have to mention the colon. And inside this, you have to mention the variable names: integer ID, float, tuition fee, that is T fee, and these are called as field, or it is also called as data members inside the class. And then you can have a function. Suppose I have written over one function over here, that is void display. So inside this display, I have displayed the student ID and student tuition fee. End of the display. So inside this function void display, I have opened the curly bracket, closed the curly bracket, and I have mentioned the logic for this display, wherein I am going to display the student ID and student tuition fee. So this is how I have mentioned the data members and functions inside the class. Now I am going to close the class with the closing curly bracket and at the end semicolon. So again I am repeating how I define the class. So here it is, inside the class student, I have given the name for the class student. You can give any name to the class. So here it is, I have given the class name as a student. This is the opening curly bracket and this is the closing curly bracket. And keep in mind, again I am repeating, you have to close the curly bracket and you have to mention the semicolon. This is the notation to start the class and to end the class. This is the access modifier. I have mentioned here public, nothing but these members are accessible from anywhere from inside your program. So again I am repeating, in the public you have to mention this colon after this access specifier, and then integer ID, then semicolon, float, T fee, semicolon. These are the data members. We can mention as per the requirement of the problem statement. You can mention n number of data members inside this class. Again, I would mention here one function. You can mention n number of functions inside the class. So void display, I have mentioned only one function over here, which will display student ID and student tuition. And at the end, I have closed the class with the semicolon. So this is how you can write the class inside the C++. Next point is object. So what is object? Object is an instance of a class. Keep in mind, object is an instance of a class. When a class is defined, no memory is allocated, but when it is instantiated, that is, an object is created, memory is allocated. So a class provides a blueprint for object. So basically, an object is created from a class. It is a blueprint for the object, and object is created from the class. We declare objects of a class with exactly the same sort of declaration that we declare variables of basic types. So how to declare the objects? When a class is defined, only the specification for the object is defined and no memory or storage is allocated. To use the data and access the functions defined inside the class, we need to create the objects. How to create the object? This is the syntax to create the object. The class name and object name and at the end semicolon this is the way to create the object. So this is our class name. Whatever we have class name, mention the class name over here, and after this you have to mention the object name. You can give any name to the object and at the end you have to mention semicolon. So this is the way to create the object of your class. We will see this with the help of example. So how to access the data members and member functions using the object. So data members and member functions of class can be accessed using the dot operator with the object. For example, if the name of the object is obj and you want to access the member functions with the name display, then you will have to write obj.display. So this is the way to declare or to access the member function using the object. Keep in mind this dot is nothing but used to access the data members present in the class by using the object. So how to access the data members? The public data members are also accessed in the same way given. However, the private data members are not allowed to be accessed directly by the object. So if your data members are public, you can access it directly by using the object. However, if your data members are private, you can't access it directly by using the object. We will see it later on in detail what is public, private, protected. We will have a separate session for this. For time being, just understand if your data members are public, it is accessible from anywhere in your program. So accessing a data member depends solely on the access control of that data member. So this access controls is given by access modifiers in C++. So which are these access modifiers? There are three access modifiers. First one is public, next one is private, and next one is protected. So keep in mind, public means you can access these data members anywhere in your program. So next is how to access the member functions in class. Or no, it's how to define member functions in class. So there are two ways to define the member functions inside the class. First one is inside the class definition, and next one is outside the class definition. We will see both of these ways to define the function. So to define the member function outside the class definition, we have to use the scope resolution operator. What is this scope resolution operator? This is called as scope resolution operator. 2 times colon is nothing but the scope resolution operator. It is called as scope resolution operator. Now with this, along with this class name and function you have to mention to define your function outside the class. We will see this with the help of example. So how to define member functions inside the class definition. So this is our class student. Inside we have public members defined as integer ID, float, tuition fee. These are the data members, and we have mentioned over here one function, that is void display. Inside this function we have mentioned or just displayed the student ID and tuition fee. So this is the way to define the function inside the class that we have seen earlier. So whatever inside the class function you have mentioned inside the class are nothing but the functions inside class definition. At the end is the end of the class with the closing curly bracket and semicolon. Don't forget to mention the semicolon at the end of the class because it is a syntax. If you forgot to mention this semicolon, the compiler simply gives you error messages. So how to mention member functions outside the class definition? So again, I will take the same example. Class student, public members are integer ID and float tuition fee T fee. And I have mentioned this void display as a function. I have just mentioned the prototype of this function inside the class student. I made it blue to, and I have ended this class over here. I have not mentioned body of the display inside this class student. I want to write body of this display function outside the class. So how to define it? To define it, you have to mention void is nothing but the return type, and then you have to mention class name, that is student, then scope resolution operator. This operator is called as scope resolution operator, colon, double colon, and then name of the function, that is display. And this is how you have to mention the function outside the class. Open the curly bracket, mention whatever you want to display, and just close the function. So this is the opening of the function and this is the closing of the function. So this is how you can write the function body outside the class. You can, again I am repeating, you can write the function body inside the class as well as you can write the body of the function outside the class. So this is how you have to mention the function body outside the class. When you write the function body outside the class, just you have to mention this void display as a prototype inside your class student. So I'm going to demonstrate whatever we have learned. And after demonstration, we will have a question answer session. Is this visible code block? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you have to mention file, go to file, say new, and then say project. And then you have to choose the console application and you have to say go. Click on next, choose the language and give the project name. I will give here class and object demo. So this is the name I have given for this project, and click on next, click on finish. So this is my class and project. Just open the source open this main.cpp. This is the by default code provided by the IDE as that we have seen in the last lecture. Now inside this I am going to define the class. So this is the way to define the class. This is the simple class. Inside this class I have not mentioned anything. What I am going to do here, just I will compile it and see if is there any error or not. It is just for your information, no need to compile it again and again. You can compile it at the end. There is 0 errors and 0 warnings. So inside this class I am going to mention the visibility access modifier, that is public, and then you have to go to the give the colon. And inside this I am going to define one integer variable ID, that is student ID, and float variable, that is tuition fee. Now I'm going to define one function over here, void display. Then inside this I'm going to print cout student ID is equal to and then I will say here indel. Then is cout student tuition fee and then I will say T fee. So these two statements are mentioned. So what is in my program? I have mentioned one student class, and inside I have mentioned the public members as integer, tuition fee, and display function. Now I'm going to do now. I'm going to compile it, and I'm going to check whether there is any error message or not. So there are 0 errors and 0 warnings, so there is no error inside my code. Now I'm going to execute this program and see what is the output of the program. The output of the program is, as you have seen in the console, is the hello world. So what happened over here? We have created the class, but we have not created the object of the class, and we have not performed the call the functions present in the class. So how to create the object? So I will write this object inside the main. So how to create the object? Name of the class student, and you can give any name to the object. I have given here obj as the name of the object. So this is the way to create the object, and this is the way to write the comments inside the C++ program, similar to C that you have seen in the last year. Once you have created the object, you can access the data members present inside the class. Here it is, we have two data members, ID and tuition fee, and both are public. Means you can access these members inside this main. So to access this member, you need to use the dot operator. So how to use it? Just see obj dot, and then I'm going to say here ID. This is the way to access the ID field. I'm going to initialize it to 10 and then semicolon. Next is a dot tuition fee is equal to, for example, I am giving here 50,000. So this is the way to call to access the members, data members of the class, and both these are accessible because they are public. Now I'm going to call this display function. How to call this display function? Just you have to say obj dot display. So keep in mind, to access everything from everything of your class, you need to use object and dot operator. So object dot display, we'll call this display function. I'm going to save the program and I'm going to compile it now. Once I compile, here it is, name of the class is student. Just compile it. Just see, is there any error? There is no errors. As you have seen in the terminal, there are 0 errors and 0 warnings. So our program is successfully compiled. Now execute it. So once you execute it, you will get this output. Student ID is equal to 0 and student tuition fee is equal to 50,000. So this is the output of our program. So I will going to just edit it. Tuition fee is equal to name of the fee. So again I'm repeating whole program. Initially we have included this AO string that is required for cout and cin. This is the namespace we required. Then we have mentioned the class student inside. These are the two data members and one member functions. You can mention n number of data members. You can mention n number of functions, and this is the end of the class. Closing curly bracket and semicolon. Inside the main, we have created the object of student obj, and with the help of this obj object, we have called or we have accessed id field and tuition fee field, and we have initialized these values to id and tuition fee. And by using this object or display, just we have accessed this display function. So again I am compiling it. There is no no error, 0 warnings and 0 errors. Now I am going to execute it. So I will get the output as student ID is equal to 10 and student tuition fee is equal to 50,000. So this is the way to create class and object inside your C++ program. This is the simple demonstration of the class and how to create the object and how to access the data members of the class inside your main function.